Hello dear viewers, today let's focus on Wakisha, Chemistry Paper 1, 2025, and we are going to focus on the major things. We are going to look at the first thing, UNEB examiner tips. UNEB examiner tips. Then 2, we are going to look at the do's and don'ts. Do's and don'ts. Then we shall also focus on major parts. Major parts to be scored. Where do scores go? And which parts take more scores? Then lastly, we are going to focus on how to respond smartly. How to respond smartly. The correct responses are what we are going to focus on in this discussion. So endeavor to watch to the end to get a full guide on how you are scored, what are the do's and don'ts, what parts take most scores. Let's dive right away starting with item 1 here. Now item 1 actually involves what we call element of construct 2, where the learner appreciates application of chemistry in daily life. So here the learner appreciates application of chemistry in daily life. In other words, here we are looking at the learner understanding how chemistry is useful in daily life and actually making an application of it here. So what do we expect from the learner? What are those competencies we expect the learner to have achieved? Number 1, we focus on, can the learner categorize the substances he interacts with in daily life? Can he categorize them? Can he describe how they work? Then can the learner give some of the dangers of those substances? Then can the learner evaluate them or make a choice? When using one, can he choose and say this is better? So these are the key things under the basis of assessment. That's why we have in our scoring guide the category that the learner categorizes what they interact with in daily life, the function or how those substances they use in daily life work. Then, are there some dangers or negative side effects about them? Can the learner make a choice, which we call evaluate? So here the learner is making a choice or choosing. Now, which parts take most scores in this item here? Now, which parts should the learner be careful about that shouldn't fail those parts there? Actually, the category is very, very important. So if the learner can't write a correct category, then definitely can't receive the function score. So that's why under only category and function, the weight was 6 last year, but of course these weights can shift. You see, category alone here takes 4 scores. When the learner gives a function, it has no score. So the category and function scores are combined to get a block score. Now let's look at this part of danger. In the part of danger, there are 2 important things here. The identifying the danger, then explaining the danger. So identification and explanation are key, that even if a learner only states the explanation or the identifying the danger, can receive the same score as here. So identification of danger is too crucial, because without it, a learner can get very few scores. Now let's look at choice here. Under choice, a learner is expected to make a choice or evaluate. That means you must state a similarity and a difference. But remember that failure to state one of them, you can't score. This was just an oversight, that the only level is one level here, where a learner takes 6 scores. So must state both, not one of them. Now, let's dive into the first item to focus on actually where do the scores go. Now, item 1 says, children studying in a boarding school came home for holidays. They spent the following days with their parents working at the farm. In the evening, the children felt headache. So we underline the keyword headache. And their father took them to the clinic where they were given tablets. So there is another thing here called tablets. On reaching home, the elder took tablets. Elder one is taking tablets. The younger one feared and decided to take this lemon and ginger extract. After a few hours, the younger one still complained there was little relief. So here the medicine is going to relieve pain. Relieve pain. So that's their function. The elder one wondered why and has come to you for hope. But remember that tablets are actually modern medicine, or we call them synthetic medicine. Modern or synthetic medicine. Then this ginger lemon is actually the traditional medicine, or we call it herbal medicine, or we call it natural medicine. Now remember that in item 1 and 2, you must state what the examiner wants, and the responses must be very short and precise. Failure to write what the examiner wants, then here you don't have a score, because you are only going to put all your other mind and explanations in the rest of the item 3 and 4. But here you are precise and writing exactly what the guide demands. Now let's look at part A. Help them to understand how the nature is referring to category of the products, how the nature of the product suit their work. So this is the function or the use of these products. So two things. As we say, the scores for category and function are combined, so that failure to set a correct category, you can't score the function. That's why we advise, let learners look for correct statements under the category. So, tablets here that were taken by the elder, either the learner will use modern synthetic analgesic. So, under category, we need two things. The category itself, where we are saying there are two things under category. We are saying for the case of medicine, we have either modern or we have herbal. Now, these ones are divided into several forms. So we must attach the category and the form. So modern analgesic, this one is the form, then modern is the category. So both must appear to receive the score for categorizing. So modern analgesic medicine, even ginger is also analgesic, but of course traditional. Now, because the statement had also function combined, we must state the function. So we have here the category, and remember that we only score one category, but let the learner respond as the item comes. Both relieve pain. That's the function. So there is the score for that at the second level of assessment. So failure to categorize, you don't score for the function. Let's go to part B. Explain what would happen to the elder child after using the tablets for a long time. Rather, they're asking for the dangers of using modern medicine. Now, only one danger is required, explained and mitigated. So the explanation should actually bring out the danger very well, how the danger takes place. Then the mitigation must show very well how the danger has been averted. So prolonged use can damage the liver. That is actually the danger identified. Danger identified. Then because it gets overworked, this is the explanation now. Danger explained. Even if you are very brief, but make sure the response comes out very, very clearly. This can be avoided by using medicine for a short time or using safer alternatives, so danger mitigated. Make sure you are brief and precise, very smart. Avoid writing a lot unnecessary work. So that's how that part is squared. Explain to the children why the process of healing was not the same. Remember that here we are going to give the similarity and the difference to bring out the component of evaluate, because you can't state one of them. Here the learner is actually giving what we call a choice. Now let's look at the similarity. I've embedded it in here because of the way the item was said. Though both relieve pain, that is the similarity, because tablets contain the high concentration. This is modern medicine now. Here it's modern medicine. Contain the high concentration of active ingredients. Make sure that you state a similarity and a difference. So that's how that part requires. Stating one of them, no score at all. Let's go to item 2. Now under item 2, a learner appreciates diversity and interaction of substances and their importance in daily life. So appreciates diversity. But the only challenge with this item is there is a lot to cover. But the learner should struggle very, very much to be able to categorize. Because without categorizing, then the learner has to lose some scores. So it's very important to practice the category of all these areas that fall under item 2. Learning how to categorize is very, very important. So under this type of item here, what should the learner focus on? Category plus the reason. Then also focuses on giving the properties and plus one use. At least a use should be seen. Then must state the dangers and mitigate them. So here two things are required, danger and this mitigation. So a learner should know how to give the reason for the category identified and the weights were last year 4 scores, but they can change. Then should be able to give at least 3 to 4 properties. We encourage 4 properties and at least one property should have a use. So then under dangers should state the danger or the impact and should be able to mitigate. So here we only require 2 things, identifying the danger and mitigating it, not like in item 1 here. So the danger should be to the environment strictly, and the danger for item 1 should be to the human life. What happens when you contact the substance used in daily life? That's for item 1 there. Now let's go through this. Of late, there have been outbreak of fire in crowded places in Endeavour. This has prompted people to buy fire extinguishers, so we underline that. The fire extinguisher is a substance Q of molecular mass 99.98, 12% carbon, 40% calcium, then the rest is oxygen. So we must calculate the percentage of oxygen. Due to the demand, the government through the Ministry of Energy has set up a factory to produce fire extinguishers. Let's go right away to the first part. Help the manager to know and give. So here must know Q, that means must know the name of Q itself and give its category. So category goes with the reason here. So here, when the learner is making calculations, there is no shortcut. Either you pass or you fail. Because if you don't pass, there are no marks for trying. So this is calculation score. So you must pass, either pass or fail. Now, Q is calcium carbonate. That's the identity that they wanted, which is ionic compound. So here, the category is ionic compound, then its reason must come out here. So category plus the reason. So here a learner must categorize, then must state the reason. Not like for item 1 where only category is required. There are various reasons why you categorize it as ionic. Either you say because it's formed from a combination of a metal and a non-metal, or rather use these other ones, because it's an electrolyte, because it conducts electricity, because it contains ions. Just one reason and one category is required there. So they also needed this part of identifying it as calcium carbonate. But this can be combined with the score of the ionic compound here to also take on category identified here. Now there are various ways of categorizing. We can also categorize it as a salt, then give the reason. It's an insoluble salt, so formed from precipitation reaction or combination of calcium ions and carbonate ions here. Now let's go to suitability. When they ask for suitability, actually they want properties and one use. Make sure one of the properties brings out a use here. It's better that way, because that's what the basis of assessment emphasizes. Let's see this. Carbon dioxide does not support burning. That's a property. Then what's the use? The use is used in fire extinguishers. So this use is only important. Other uses you can leave them out. Carbon dioxide has a pleasant taste. We don't need the use there. But if you attach, no problem. Then carbon dioxide has a low melting point, a property. At least we encourage 4 properties. It sublimes. So for to be on the safe side. So that's how the scores, at least here there are two categories, then with one reason for them. So 4 scores, then this part for properties plus a use plus a calculation also takes on those scores there. So under here, the things scored are category plus reason, 2 properties and 1 use plus 1 use, then 3 the danger to the environment, then a calculation. So always the basis has 4 things here. Calculation is one of them. Let's look at the danger here. Give any advice to the company on the effects of the factory's existence in the area. Remember that this danger should be to the environment according to the basis of assessment. So, dust pollution decreases air quality. That is actually the impact on the environment. Then it's mitigation here, mitigated here. So it should be to the environment, because air is in the environment, not to the human life. Let's go to section B. Now in section B, part 1, we have 2 items, item 3 and item 4. And here we are dwelling on industrial processes, because here the learner appreciates application of chemistry to the economy of Uganda. So what does the basis of assessment contain here? So here the basis contains actually raw materials, then process of production, then side effects, then social benefits. Now, a learner can write about, now for the raw materials and the process, a learner can combine them in the same description, because when describing this process, the raw materials are actually mentioned there. But to be on the safe side, we encourage the learner to list the raw materials first, because as we saw last year, only one raw material had actually 4 scores. Just a raw material had 4 scores. So most of the scores are focused on the raw material. So a learner can isolate raw materials. At least one raw material must be appearing in the description there. So what other things are important there? The physical processes, actually the processes that occur without any chemical reaction. Then physical processes are very key. Then the chemical processes. These things carry a lot of scores, and normally physical processes should actually be many in the description here, in the description of the process here. Then also the learner must identify some side effects here. So identification and explanation is very, very crucial. So a lot of scores go around those areas there. So must be able to identify the side effect. You see, identification only with mitigation is still 6 scores. Explanation with mitigation is still 6 scores. Of course, that was the scoring tool for last year. Then social benefits should contain 3 points. The social benefit itself, then impact of the social benefit, then the effect of the social benefit. There should come out very, very well. Let's see one example here. Sodium hydroxide is a useful compound that is used in different chemical processes like manufacture of soap. So sodium hydroxide is very important here. Due to its benefits, so there are benefits, the ministry wants to start producing sodium hydroxide. So there is producing sodium hydroxide. That's the industry they want to institute locally in order to cut costs incurred during transportation. However, environmentalists and some local leaders are worried of the impact. So those are the side effects, and the government is planning sensitization of the communities. So let's look at directly the raw materials. We actually advise learners to isolate them, because even if it fails the process, at least raw materials carry many scores. So this one is a raw material. This one is a raw material. Now the number of raw materials actually depend on the item that has been said. Of course, last year most of those processes had actually about 3 raw materials. That's why the emphasis was 3 raw materials. But if it has 2, the emphasis will be on 2 raw materials. So then let's look at the process. Sodium hydroxide is manufactured by electrolysis of sodium chloride. So this one we've already scored the raw material. Of course, they can't score twice. I'm just placing scores. So in a mercury cell, that's a vessel. Vessel is very important, so make sure vessel appears, raw material. Vessel must appear, physical processes, chemical processes, then conversion to the desired product, coherence. So let's go on scoring this. The process begins with the preparation of brine, which is purified. So there is purification also required here. Then to remove impurities, the purified brine is fed into the mercury cell, which is a vessel. When electricity is passed through brine, electrolysis occurs. So this is a chemical process. Electrolysis is chemical because it involves breakdown of the substances into ions. So brine contains sodium ions, chloride ions, and hydrogen ions. Then they migrate to their respective electrodes. Sodium and hydrogen ions migrate to the cathode. However, sodium is preferentially discharged. So there is some chemical process here to hydrogen ions because it's more concentrated. So sodium metal formed reacts with mercury to form sodium amalgam, a chemical process. Sodium amalgam is dissolved in water. Dissolving is a physical process. Then you are forming sodium hydroxide, chemical process. Sodium hydroxide solution is evaporated to dryness. Evaporation is a physical process. Then cooled is a physical process to form sodium hydroxide pellets, which are stored in plastic tight containers. So we have obtained conversion to the desired product, and there is coherence. So that's how we score that part there called process of production. Then to receive the weight here, we follow up these codes. How many do you have concerning chemical processes? How many physical processes? Then do I see any purification, conversion to the desired product, coherence? Then we square you and put the weight respectively. Last year, the process had 6 weights, 6 scores as weighted. Then let's look at side effects. Now here, the learner must mention the side effects. Sound pollution is danger. Then there is, of course, this can be interchangeable. You might not know which is the explanation, which is the danger. Of course, by the way it sounds here, this looks to be danger identified, which is due to sound pollution. Order does not matter in responding to this. Whether you start with the explanation and the danger identified later, it's fine. Mitigated by installing sound absorbers. Danger mitigated, maximum of 6 scores. Only 1 is required. This one was just added for consumption purposes. Social benefits. Employment opportunities. So this is social benefit. Then its effect, increased income. Then its impact to the one who has gained the employment. So impact of the social benefit. Total of this, total for that item, 18 scores. Let's go to item 4. Iron metal is crucial in the production of steel, a fundamental material in modern construction, transportation, and industry. Recently, geologists discovered the iron, which attracted the attention of the government to start a steel manufacturing plant that extracts and uses iron. So we are going to focus on the extraction of iron there. So looking down into the responses, raw materials are here. This first raw material, next raw material, next raw material, next raw material. So the raw materials are hematite, coke, limestone, and air. Let's look at the process of production. Of course, isolating raw materials and embedding them in the process has no difference. You can ignore this part and they will appear in here. They will be squared. Iron is extracted from the ores called hematite. That's a raw material. Crushing is a physical process. Then ground into fine powder, physical process. Hematite is mixed with coke. Mixing is physical. And limestone. So these are raw materials. Of course, we've squared them. We can't square them again. This is for just squaring purposes. Into a blast furnace, that's a vessel from the top. Hot air is a raw material. Blown from the bottom. Blowing from the bottom is physical process. Then coke is oxidized. That's a chemical process to form carbon dioxide. Equations are optional. So if you are not sure, leave them out because scores remain the same. Carbon dioxide reacts with unreacted coke. So this is a chemical process forming carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide reduces. So this is still a chemical process to molten iron, and carbon dioxide is given up in the process. Limestone decomposes. Limestone is a raw material. Then decomposition is a chemical process. Calcium oxide formed reacts with silicon dioxide. This is a chemical process which is an impurity. So here is removing impurities. Purification also is there. The silicate floats on top of molten iron, preventing oxidation. Molten iron being denser collects at the bottom. The molten iron being denser collects at the bottom of the furnace and is tapped off periodically. So the more iron obtained is impure and is purified by converting it into wrought iron. So conversion to the desired product, and of course there is coherence there. So there is purification again there. So that's actually how we describe that. Let's look at the side effects. So here the learner must actually put a good explanation. At least we encourage that he must mitigate with 2 mitigations, because 1 mitigation can be weak. Air pollution is the side effect. Mainly, this is the explanation. Then how did he mitigate it? Mitigated by installing scrubbers in the exhaust systems and promoting alternative energy sources. So at least 2 mitigations, but they score 1. Social benefits, source of revenue to the government, that's the social benefit. Then explanation, effect of the social benefit, then the impact of the social benefit. Also, maximum 18 scores there. Let's look at the next part 2, where the learner appreciates existence of natural resources and their importance in daily life. So here, the learner should write about the category. Of course, category is very, very important. Then must give a reason. Failure to state a correct category actually will not score things on the composition and the reason. Of course, example is always in the scenario, no need for it. So 3 things: category, reason, composition. Then another thing to write about is the impact of the human activity on the natural resource. So must identify the impact identified, then must explain or state how the impact is, how it is taking place, then must mitigate. Then lastly must give the importance, or which we are calling a benefit. It's not a social benefit. Actually, it's the importance. So here, he must state the importance itself, then explain it. So, benefit and its explanation, 5 scores. So that item takes 15 scores. That's as per last year. Let's go through this first one here. At Namanve Industrial Park, there exists many factories that dispose their waste into water bodies. So I can see a natural source of a water body here. So right away, disposing wastes is actually the human activity. So this is the human activity taking place there. Then the natural resource is water. So let's go into the responses. So what must the learner write about? The first thing to write about is actually the category plus the reason, then plus composition. A learner can use subheadings like this, like I've done here, or rather can just write paragraphs. I always advise paragraphs. Write first paragraph, leave a line. Next paragraph for composition, leave a line. Next paragraph for impact, leave a line. Then lastly, importance. So, water is a renewable natural resource. This is actually category identified. Then the reason must be stated clearly for you to receive scores about the composition. What is the chemical makeup of water? Here you look at the chemical part, not substances dissolved in it. So here there are only 2 components, water that is made up chemically. So this is first component, this is second component. But of course, other resources can have more than 3 components or 2 components. So water has 2 components to receive a maximum of 6 scores there. Let's look at the impact. A learner should leave a line, then got the impact here. So the human activity was waste disposal. This is the human activity. But remember, we are not looking for human activity. We are looking for its impact. on the natural resource, then how it occurs, then into water bodies, block drainage systems causing floods. So actually this one is the impact itself, flooding. Reason here, this is how it occurs. How does flooding come about? Then mitigation. So that's how the learner should state it. Of course, order does not matter. Whether it starts with the explanation and the impact later, because you can sometimes not know which one is the impact, which one is the explanation. So just write something that is well explained and well mitigated. At least we encourage two mitigation. Like here, there is waste management, providing dumping sites, raising community awareness to be safe, because some mitigations might be weak, though we look for only one mitigation. Let's look at the importance. Now, the importance must be stated and its explanation. Water is a key resource in various industrial processes. So this is the benefit. Then how? Then this is the explanation. It is used for manufacturing in machinery. So must state the benefit or importance and explain it. This is not a social benefit, so you don't expect employment here and infrastructure development or other social issues here. It must be the importance of the natural resource. So let's go to item 6. The recently discovered petroleum has prompted the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources to contract an oil processing plant. So we are looking at oil here as the natural resource. Let's dive direct into it here. Category: oil is a non-renewable natural resource. So this is the category. What's the reason? Cannot be replenished. Reason: what are the components of oil? It's basically carbon and hydrogen. There are two major components. Of course, there are other smaller elements like sulfur, but majorly we have carbon and hydrogen. So you state that. Of course, here also two components. Impact of human activities. Now let's look at the impact. Oil spills, this is a human activity by humans which reach water bodies, cutting off oxygen, causing suffocation. So there is the impact here, suffocation, cut off. Then there is suffocation. Then there is also how does it come about? Because of oxygen cut off. Then the mitigation here. So the three things must come out very, very well. Importance of this natural resource called oil. So when purified, produces various chemicals like motor fuels. Fuels run automobiles, so there is a benefit and the explanation here. So the two things must come out very, very well. So the total is 15 scores. Thank you.